Okay. All right. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. We are back. Continuing with our look at the triennial Torah portion. This week, last week we wanted to do 2 chapters. We weren't able. This week we want to do 1.5 chapters. So we'll see if we are able to achieve that task this week. We're going to be looking at Genesis 41, starting with the first verse, all the way over to Genesis 42 and 17. Bereshit, chapter 41, all the way over to chapter 42 and the 17th verse. And we will be dealing with the rise of Yosef. The rise of Yosef. It's interesting when we think about Yosef and his life in Egypt, where he goes there and he experiences a ascent to a degree when he goes and he becomes this high-ranking person in the house of Potiphar, and then after that he has this these circumstances and situations that happen in his life which cause him to end up in jail, in prison. And so now we see, I guess technically this is the second rise of Yosef, but it is a rise nonetheless. So we're going to go ahead and go over to, let me pull up for us. I'm going to have you actually read the entire situation. Genesis 41 all the way up to 42 and 17. And then once we've read all of that, we'll go back to 41 and discuss some of the pertinent parts over here. So let me go ahead and pull up for us chapter 41 here. And remember, go ahead and put your comments in the comment section. Questions, comments, insights. If you want to reference scriptures, it's helpful for you just to go ahead and copy and paste the actual verses in the chat. And we can just put that up on the screen. All right, so let's just go ahead. I'll pull up this for us and we'll begin reading here at verse 1.
Genesis 41 and 1. And it came to be, at the end of 2 years' time, that Pharaoh had a dream, and saw him standing by the river, and saw 7 cows coming up out of the river, beautiful looking and fat, and they fed amongst the reeds. They saw 7 other cows coming up after them out of the river, ugly and lean of flesh, and stood by the other cows on the bank of the river. And the ugly and lean of flesh cows ate up the 7 beautiful looking and fat cows. Then Pharaoh awoke, and he slept and dreamed a second time, and saw 7 heads of grain coming up on one stalk, plump and good, and saw 7 lean heads scorched by the east wind coming up after them. And the 7 lean heads swallowed the 7 plump and completed heads. Then Pharaoh awoke and saw it was a dream. And it came to be in the morning that his spirit was moved, and he sent and called for all the magicians of Mitzrayim and all its wise men. And Pharaoh related to them his dreams, but there was no one who could interpret them for Pharaoh. Then the chief cupbearer spoke to Pharaoh, saying, I remember my crimes this day, when Pharaoh was wroth with his servants, and put me in confinement in the house of the captain of the guard, both me and the chief baker. Each one of us dreamed a dream in one night, he and I. Each of us dreamed according to the interpretation of his own dream. And there was with us a Hebrew youth, a servant of the captain of the guard, and we related to him, and he interpreted our dreams for us. To each man he interpreted according to his own dream. And it came to be, as he interpreted for us, so it came to be. He restored me to my office, and he hanged him. Then Pharaoh sent and called Yosef, and they hurriedly brought him out of the dungeon. And he shaved and changed his garments and came to Pharaoh. And Pharaoh said to Yosef, I have dreamed a dream, and there was no one to interpret it. Now I myself have heard it said of you, that you understand a dream to interpret it. And Yosef answered Pharaoh, saying, It is not in me. Let Elohim answer Pharaoh with peace. And Pharaoh said to Yosef, See, in my dream I stood on the bank of the river, and saw 7 cows coming up out of the river, beautiful, looking and fat, and they fed amongst the reeds. Then I saw 7 other cows coming up after them, poor and ugly and lean of flesh, such ugliness as I have ever seen in all the land of Mizraim. And the lean of flesh and ugly cows ate up the first 7, the fat cows. Yet when they had eaten them up, no one would have known that they had eaten them, for they were as ugly as at the beginning. Then I awoke. Also I looked in my dream and saw 7 heads coming up one stalk, complete and good. Then saw 7 other heads withered, lean, scorched by the east wind coming up after them. And the lean head swallowed the 7 good heads. And I spoke to the magicians, but there was no one who could explain it to me. And Yosef said to Pharaoh, The dream of Pharaoh is one. Elohim has shown Pharaoh what he is about to do. The 7 good cows are 7 years, and the 7 good heads are 7 years. It is one dream. And the 7 lean and ugly cows which came up after them are 7 years, and the 7 empty heads scorched by the east are 7 years of scarcity of food. This is the word which I spoke to Pharaoh. Elohim has shown Pharaoh what he is about to do. See, 7 years of great plenty are coming in all the land of Mizraim, but after them 7 years of scarcity of food shall arise, and all the plenty be forgotten in the land of Mizraim. And the scarcity of the food shall destroy the land, and the plenty shall not be remembered in the land because of the scarcity of food following, for it is very severe. And the dream was repeated to Pharaoh twice, because the word is established by Elohim, and Elohim is hastening to do it. And now let Pharaoh look for a discerning and wise man, and set him over the land of Mizraim. Let Pharaoh do this, and let him appoint overseers over the land, to take up 1/5 of the land of Mizraim in the 7 years of plenty. And let them gather all the food of those good years that are coming, and store up grain under the hand of Pharaoh, and let them keep food in the cities. And the food shall be for a store for the land, for the 7 years of scarcity of food, which shall be in the land of Mizraim. And do not let the land be cut off by the scarcity of food. And the word was good in the eyes of Pharaoh, and in the eyes of all his servants. And Pharaoh said to his servants, Could we find another like him, a man in whom is the spirit of Elohim? Then Pharaoh said to Yosef, Since Elohim has shown you all this, there is no one as discerning and wise as you. Be over my house, you yourself, and at your mouth all my people shall kiss. Only in the throne I am greater than you. And Pharaoh said to Yosef, See, I have set you over all the land of Mizraim. And Pharaoh took his seal ring off his hand and put it on Yosef's. And he dressed him in his garments of fine linen, and put a gold chain around his neck. And he had him ride in the 2nd chariot which he had, and they cried out before him, Bow the knee. And he set him over all the land of Mitzrayim. And Pharaoh said to Yosef, I am Pharaoh, and without a word from you let no man lift his hand or foot in all the land of Mitzrayim. And Pharaoh called Yosef's name Zaphnath Paneah, and he gave him as a wife Asenath, the daughter of Potipharah, priest of On. And Yosef went out over the land of Mitzrayim. And now Yosef was 30 years old when he stood before Pharaoh, sovereign of Mitzrayim. And Yosef went out from the presence of Pharaoh and went throughout all the land of Mitzrayim. And in the 7th years of plenty, the ground brought forth generously. And he gathered all the food of the 7 years which were in the land of Mitzrayim, and laid up the food in the cities. He laid up in every city the food of the fields which surrounded them. Thus Yosef gathered very much grain, as the sand of the sea, until he ceased counting, for it was without number. And to Yosef were born 2 sons before the years of scarcity of food came, whom Asenath, the daughter of Potipharah, priest of On, bore to him. And Yosef called the name of the firstborn Manasseh, for Elohim has made me forget all my toil and all my father's house. And the name of the second he called Ephraim, for Elohim has caused me to be fruitful in the land of my affliction. And the 7 years of plenty which were in the land of Mitzrayim came to an end. And 7 years of scarcity of food began to come, as Yosef had said. And the scarcity of food was in all lands, but in all the land of Mitzrayim there was bread. But when all the land of Mitzrayim hungered, and the people cried to Pharaoh for bread, Pharaoh said to all the Mitzrayites, Go to Yosef, do whatever he says to you. And the scarcity of food was over all the place of the earth. And Yosef opened up all the storehouses and sold to the Mitzrayites. And the scarcity of food was severe in the land. And all the earth came to Yosef in Mitzrayim to buy again, because the scarcity of food was severe in all the earth.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That was a long journey to repeat twice. The whole thing through.
Yeah.
That means it was important.
Exactly. Okay, let's read a little bit of this here.
To 17.
To 17.
All right, Genesis 42. And when Jacob saw that there was grain in Mitzrayim, Jacob said to his sons, Why do you look at each other? And he said, See, I have heard there is grain in Mitzrayim. Go down to that place and buy for us, and let us live and not die. And Joseph's 10 brothers went down to buy grain in Mitzrayim. But Jacob did not send Joseph's brothers Benjamin with his brothers, for he said, Let some harm come to him. And the sons of Israel went to buy grain among those who journeyed, for the scarcity of food was in the land of Canaan. And Yosef was the governor over the land, and he was the one who sold to all the people of the land. And Joseph's brother came and bowed down before him with their faces to the earth. And Yosef saw his brothers and recognized them. But he acted as a stranger to them, and spoke to them harshly, and said to them, Where do you come from? And they said, From the land of Canaan, to buy food. So Yosef recognized his brothers, but they did not recognize him. And Yosef remembered the dreams which he had dreamed about them, and said to them, You are spies! You have come to see the nakedness of the land. And they said to him, No, my master, but your servants have come to buy food. We are all one man's sons, for we are trustworthy. Your servants are not spies. But he said to them, No, but you have come to see the nakedness of the land. And they said, Your servants are 12 brothers, the sons of one man in the land of Canaan. And see, the youngest is with our father today, and no one is more. And Yosef said to them, It is as I spoke to you, saying, You are spies. By this you shall be proven by the life of Pharaoh. You do not leave this place, unless your youngest brother comes here. Send one of you and let him bring your brother while you are kept in prison. So let your words be proven to see whether there is any truth in you, or else by the life of Pharaoh you are spies. And he put them all together in prison for 3 days.
Okay. Very good. Very good. So, we see a lot going on over here. Let's go back. Let's go back to 41. Okay. It's interesting when we go back and we see this. It's interesting looking at this, these dreams. Something kind of came to me as I was just looking at this again. But when you look at these dreams, it's hard to really think about these dreams when you know its meaning. You know, when you hear it, it seems so obvious to you now. Because, you know, when you
You knew the whole story.
right, when you know the story already, and then you hear the dreams, like when you don't know, it's like, what's going on? Like, it's like these cows and wheat, and they're eating themselves, and beautiful ones and ugly ones.
He said it was the ugliest thing he saw.
But when you just think about it with the understanding of, you know, you already know what it means. It's interesting. It causes you really to think about bias, right? When you think about the idea of, you know, presuppositions, right? When we, you know, read anything, there's some kind of bias that's going on in your mind. You know, the lens that you look through and, you know, view this or that. You know, the way in which you view it is biased to the lens, you know, that you're looking at these things. And so, as someone who knows already the story, you know, when you hear it, it's you know, it's interesting, but you're able to fully understand what's going on in the dreams when you have the knowledge of, you know, what it means, right? But it just caused me really to think about just the idea of you know, the way that we think about things, you know, really shapes our understanding, right? And so if you come to a particular situation, you know, this is an important thing when we think about, you know, interpreting the scriptures, right? You know, if we come to it with kind of Greek, Western lens, right? We're not able to properly understand what it is that the authors are trying to bring forth, because that wasn't their bias, right? We're talking about Moses, right? He's writing this in Hebrew, right? He's giving you the words that the Most High spoke to him, and he's coming from that Hebrew perspective, right? And so when we take our westernized thoughts and try to understand what these things that are going on that are being expressed, from a Hebrew world view, it gets mixed up, right? Things get confused. And so this is even true when we're looking at the text over here, because the Most High actually is causing these people over here to have these dreams. Pharaoh, right? He's given these visions literally to Pharaoh, but he don't understand what's going on. To him, it's just it's foolishness, right? He don't get it, right? Because he don't have the proper perspective, right? And so now he seeks out someone who's able to cause him. When you think about this process, this really should have caused those people to forsake their gods. When they were able to, they give credence to the true and living Elohim to a degree, but it seems like they really should have, looked at this gift basically that they were given and said, you know what, this really must be the Elohim, the actual mightiest one, who's able to, give us this information ahead of time. Not only give us information ahead of time, but it happened just like this.
It actually happened. That was the proof.
It was the proof, right? So not only does he have this dream, and then he's given the interpretation of the dream, but as it plays out, he should have been like, I'm going to go ahead and let you be, the right hand man, but I feel like I need to be following after this God of yours, if these are the types of things that he's able to do. It's interesting when we think about Yeshua, and we kind of spoke about this before. When Yeshua walked the earth, he performs these miracles, and this is why people are following him. They're following based on all these marvelous and wonderful things that he did. The Most High proves himself to Israel and Egypt, by the way, through these miraculous acts, the 10 plagues that he goes through in Egypt. Why do we look over here at Pharaoh? I guess it just is not. It's not time. I guess he has to just have this kind of surface level understanding and just take what he could get wherever he can get it. At this time, so that we could have the fullness of time, generations later. Good.
I mean, it seems like instead of them worshiping the Most High, they kind of was worshiping Joseph.
Yes.
And then that's why whenever he died, they was so easily able to forget the power behind.
Yes. And now when you say that, it helps you to see the bias. They have this bias that is really, at the end of the day, is carnal. They cannot think about an unseen God. They can't fathom it. They have to have something that they're able to look and see and touch and feel and taste and smell. they deal with their senses. They can't see the Most High, but they can see Yosef. And so, when you look at the way in which he's elevated, he's next to the ruler of the world, basically, because of these miraculous things. And so, but his presupposition being this idea of the way that they deal with things in general, being from kind of this, at the end of the day, this carnal understanding of things, right? Where they're not able to really see things from this carnal, from a spiritual perspective. Let's go over to drop down to
and no dinner.
16. Read again read 15 and 16.
And Pharaoh said to Yosef, I have dreamed a dream, and there was no one to interpret it. Now I myself have heard it said of you that you understand a dream, to interpret it. And Yosef answered Pharaoh, saying, It is not in me. Let Elohim answer Pharaoh with peace.
Okay, so again, when we look at Pharaoh, his bias is shown, because when you think about the people that told him about Yosef, when they experienced the same situation, he told them. He said Elohim can interpret the dream. And so really what they were supposed to say whenever they went back to Pharaoh, well, when the one that, which one was there? One of them gets killed, right? The cupbearer is the one that goes back. So when the cupbearer goes back and says, I had my dream interpreted, Joseph told him that Elohim was the one who gave him the knowledge. And so he was supposed to go back and tell Pharaoh that either Elohim's able to, he's supposed to have Elohim mentioned in the situation. Maybe, yeah, Joseph's the one that's doing it, that's speaking it, but he's getting the knowledge from the Elohim of the Hebrews, right? But again, his bias is not allowing him to think about things in this way, because they don't know the unseen Elohim, right? They don't know him, right? They only know his representatives, his people that walk around here on this earth. And so it's interesting that multiple places we can look and see kind of get this understanding of the way that, not to say that these people have Western minds, because they're not they're not in the West, but to what you say?
It's an anachronism.
Oh yes, that is a thought that's placed outside of time, outside of its proper time context. But what they don't have is a spiritual mind.
Look.
Right?
They have a hyper spiritual mind.
Hyper?
Yeah, they worship all this.
I think they have hypo.
Hypo.
If you worship a bunch of gods that you make, is that hyper spiritual or
that's like
hypo spiritual?
That's a lot of worshiping.
It is, but I don't know if it's spiritual though. It's quasi spiritual. Right? It's pseudo. What's the difference between pseudo and quasi?
I think they're the same thing.
Oh, okay, good. All right, so let's keep on going. Let's look down here. Let's see here. Let's drop down to verses 28. Read verse 28 because the thought is doubled down upon in terms of the originator of where these dreams are coming from. Read 28 down to 32.
It says, "This is the word which I spoke to Pharaoh. Elohim has shown Pharaoh what he is about to do. See, 7 years of great plenty are coming in all the land of Mizraim, but after them 7 years of scarcity of food shall arise, and all the plenty be forgotten in the land of Mizraim. And the scarcity of food shall destroy the land, and the plenty shall not be remembered in the land because of the scarcity of food following, for it is very severe. And the dream was repeated to Pharaoh twice because the word is established by Elohim, and Elohim is hastening to do it."
Okay, very good. So again, we see that the Most High really was speaking to Pharaoh. He was speaking to him in a encrypted manner, but he was speaking to him nonetheless. And it was necessary for this man of God to come and interpret these dreams that he was having. And so we see that this thing was repeated, because the Most High deals with 2 or 3 witnesses. He gave him this dream 2 different ways. Maybe not that he was able to get it the second time, but just to emphasize the importance of it and the necessity for him actually to remember it so that he was able to act on it. Right? And so when we think about what we kind of see kind of as this kind of this theme that we see over here, this idea that the Most High dealing with, because this thing that's about to happen really is the way in which his people are preserved, right? It's the beginning of the process of how his people are preserved, right? All of these things have to happen the way in which that they happen so that Israel is able to come up and benefit from the wisdom that's given to Yosef, right? All of these things need to happen the way that they happen for the preservation of his people. And so it's interesting when we think about the Most High and these processes that he allows to happen. It made me think about a few scriptures. Let's look at 2 scriptures here which are kind of related, and we'll deal with the second one after we read the first and the second. If we go to Matthew 26,
Matthew, Mark
26, read for us 41.
41. Matthew 26:41 says, "Watch and pray, lest you enter into trial. The spirit indeed is eager, but the flesh is weak."
Okay, very good. The Messiah here speaking to his disciples, causing them to know that, we have this existence where we have this spiritual existence. The spiritual existence that lives in this physical body, right? The spirit is, it says, eager. It's willing. It's there for all of the proverbial smoke. But the flesh, he says, is weak, right? In this situation, he's trying to get his disciples to stay awake and watch and pray with him, and they're falling asleep. And so the Messiah, I wish that one day I could be like the Master Messiah, who always has these profound things to say that are, connected to these just everyday situations that are going on. Right? These guys are just as late. He's been teaching them all night. They've been up all night. They went through a Seder. They're on the run. Basically, they're out in the middle of the night. They've had 4 cups of wine. Their bodies are weak. And Messiah's like, here, you gotta stay awake. I'm gonna go over here. It's quiet, it's dark. Stay awake. But they can't, and his response is connected to what's going on, but it's also bigger than that, right? Because when we think about the idea of, watching and praying, we think about the idea of being able to observe the things that are going on and staying in communication with the Most High. Now think about Pharaoh for a moment. Think about Pharaoh if he was in fact someone who was connected to the Almighty, right? And then he's able to look at his dreams, right? He's able to look at what's going on around him in his circumstances and situations and put these things together from a spiritual standpoint and then make determinations based on the things that the Most High is telling him. But he's not able to do that because he don't have the first ingredient, which is that relationship with the Almighty. And so when we are actually, when our spirit man is connected to the Elohim who is spirit, we're able to operate in a way that kind of surpasses the weakness of the flesh. It's interesting when you think about what Messiah is saying over here. The flesh is weak, the spirit is eager. But when you think about what's going on, even though he's saying that the flesh is weak, the flesh is ruling. So in that regard, it's strong. He's saying that the flesh is weak, but in their situation, it's strong because it's dominating. Where the person is actually doing what it is that the flesh is having for it to do. Right? And so even though he's saying the flesh is weak, when we succumb to its leading, from our perspective, it's actually strong. Right? But we have to be able to flip that. We have to be able to reverse that. We have to be able to understand that the spirit is the thing that has to be able to control our lives if we want to live a life that's pleasing to the Most High. Let's add to this saying what Yeshua said here. Let's add to that with Luke 21. Read verses 34 through 36.
34 through 36. It says, "And take heed to yourselves, lest your hearts be weighed down by gluttony and drunkenness, and worries of this life, and that day come on you suddenly. For it shall come as a snare on all those dwelling on the face of the earth. Watch then at all times, and pray that you be counted worthy to escape all this about to take place, and to stand before the Son of Adam."
Okay, very good. So now when we think about this thing that Messiah is speaking over here, with the same kind of end thought process as being watching and praying here, but he gives you more as it relates to the weakness or the strength depending on how we think about it, of the flesh. He said, take heed to yourselves, lest your hearts. And when we think about the way that, again, now, when we think about the way that this is being given to us, we think about the heart as a single part of the body. But the way that this is being given to us is kind of like it's telling you apart, but it's really speaking of the whole. What's that?
Synecdoche.
Very good. Very good. My most.
Right, but it's not that though. It's synecdoche.
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 Why did I say it wrong?
I don't know, because that's how it looks. But it's giving you a part, but it's speaking of the whole, right? Lest your hearts be weighed down. Your heart is just a part of you. Mm-hmm. But when we think about it in this context, the thing that you love the most, the thing that you love the most deals with what it really causes the whole of you to be concerned with.
Like that rudder, it can move the whole ship.
Yeah. Or the bit that goes in the mouth of a horse. It's the small little thing, but you're able to control the whole big strong horse by the bit that's in his mouth. And so when we think about this idea of your heart, that thing which you love, that causes you to, act in a way that's congruent with the leadings of this little thing in you, which is your heart. Here is representative of your entire life. Your soul is being weighed down by gluttony and drunkenness, by overindulgences. Right? Overindulgences connected with the flesh, with carnality, life, and all of these things that make your physical existence more extravagant. Right? And so when you're overly concerned with, because again, when we think about this thing that is sin, I saw something just the other day when it talked about the translation of the Ten Commandments, where it says, thou shalt not kill. Right? Where killing, of course, is not the sin. But illicit killing is. Right? Because you kill things as part of sacrifice. You kill people as part of self-defense. You kill people as part of judgment. You kill people in war. And so there's killing. So the Most High don't forbid or prohibit us from killing. He prohibits us from illicit or unwarranted killing, which is murder. Right? And so when we think about gluttony, partaking in, things that you like to eat.
It's fine.
Yeah, you can have things that you like to eat, but when you take it to the extreme level, it becomes sin. Right? Let's see what the Greek is how it's defining this here.
He said he saw that short too.
Oh yeah, it was interesting. I almost followed the guy actually, just from the 5 second short thing. have to do some more investigating before I just be. Just as a side note, YouTube, I just be subscribing like a mug on YouTube most of the time. But sometimes, I have to do a little more investigation before I just subscribe willy-nilly. Right? Okay, so this word here, surfeiting in the English, it says overcharged with surfeiting. In this version, it gives us gluttony. Let's see what this is. Probably the same as this. Properly a headache, a seizure of pain from drunkenness, debauch, glut, surfeiting.
Surfeiting.
That's interesting. That's an interesting word there. Let's see what Noah has to say. Oppressing the system. This is what we need. We need Noah Webster to help us with the English language. Sometimes it's a little complicated. Oppressing the system by excessive eating and drinking, cloying, loading, or filling to disgust. Okay, so there's a difference between you enjoying this or that, from eating it, right? That's one thing. But when you eat and eat and eat until you get to the who came up with these all-you-can-eat places?
Buffet.
A buffet. Well, the buffet is not necessarily the same as all you can eat, I think. A buffet is like there's all of these different choices that you have. But all you can eat now, there's an endless amount of all of these different choices that you could have. Right? All you could eat. When you just sit there and eat until you can't eat anymore. That's that got to be this. That got to be surfeiting. Isn't it? It got to be that, right? When you just sit there and load up your gut full of whatever until you can't. From a scientific standpoint, you're full, your body's full, your belly full faster than your brain or your body is able to comprehend it. You know that?
Mm-hmm. I can imagine it.
By the time you feel full, you've already surpassed that level of fullness already.
So you can eat less and still live.
I'm saying you can eat less and still be full.
Yeah.
Before you realize in your body and mind that you're full, you're actually
like your
already
stomach,
full.
You don't gotta feel like your stomach being hard.
That's not like automatic. Like how if you go and fill up your gas tank and you see the gauge. Like if you leave your car on, which you should turn it off whenever you fill your gas, but some people have done this sometimes, and maybe I might be one of those persons who, when you leave your car on, you can watch the tank go up to full. I'm saying that your biological full gas gauge is not in real time. When you eat, you become full, and then later your mind understands that it's full. Mm-hmm. And so I'm saying that by the time you feel full, your body been full already. Right? And so there's no kind of break. There's no indicator to say, oh, you're supposed to stop right now. Right? We have to be able to regulate that thing and say, oh, this is fine. This is enough. Right? Because by the time your body tells you, it's too late. But even that takes a certain frame of mind. Because it said over here in Luke 21:34, it says, take heed to yourselves, lest your hearts be weighed down by gluttony. Again, thinking about the hearts, you're wanting to just keep on indulging in a thing because it's just so good. Oh, I just want more and more of this thing. I just don't want to stop until I can't take no more. But that's in your mind. That's your mind wanting more of this thing. But your body don't. Your body don't want it. Your body really just only wants what it could use. Your mind is telling you, here, just keep on getting some more of this. Right? But Messiah is saying, take heed to yourselves lest your hearts be weighed down by gluttony and drunkenness. It's talking about food and intoxicating beverages. Okay? We know that Messiah, the first thing that Messiah did was turn some water into some wine. That's the very first thing that Messiah did. Right? He hung around so many people that was living a certain type of life. They thought he was a wine bibber. But that's one thing. But then when we talk about drunkenness, that's a whole other situation. Right? That's when you just are just going and going and going and going and feeling and feeling and feeling. But it's a mind thought process thing that's going on, right? When your mind is concentrating on your carnal desires and the worries of life, that day is going to come on you suddenly, and you're not going to be ready for it. Pharaoh, when we look back to Pharaoh, he was given the answers to life in his situation. The answers being the things that Yosef told him these dreams meant. But because he wasn't spiritually minded, he wasn't able to see what the answers were. And so when he connected with the one who was able to give him these answers, then he was able to make the necessary adjustments in his situation so that he could live. And so the same thing is true with what we see with Messiah. Yosef is a picture of Messiah. When we are able to connect with Messiah, we're able to be prepared for the things that the Most High has in store for us. When we're not connected, we don't know. And that day of judgment, that day of the coming, quote unquote, will come on you suddenly. It talks about watching, right? There was somebody who was on night watch. Right? And he stayed awake at night to make sure that no thieves came and stole anything, while the people were sleeping. Right? He kept an eye on the situation. Right? This is where ring comes from. Instead of having a person to always be on watch, now we just have these digital cameras that just move,
You could be anywhere, answer your door.
Yeah. Right?
Check your car.
All that.
In front of the house.
All that, right? Mm-hmm. But the original watcher was an actual person. Yeah. Right? And he's saying, watch, be aware of the things that's going on round about you, and be connected to the Most High, so that the day of coming don't come on you suddenly. Right? Because if you're connected to the Most High, you might not even be able really to do all the physical things that one might need to do to prepare. But because of the fact that you're connected to the source of life, you're good anyway. Right? You have to do whatever it is that you can do. But some people really aren't in a position to do a whole bunch of things. But the very most important thing that you do is be connected to the Most High. Watch, maybe just so you're not led in the wrong direction. Maybe you might not be able to do all of the things and get all of the supplies and prepare like everyone else is, but you won't be caught off guard from a spiritual perspective when the Most High crack the sky wide open. You're gonna be ready, right? Because when He returns, it's not time for I'm sorry for all that stuff that I did.
That's what they do on Day of Atonement, right before Day of Atonement. Start apologizing and stuff.
When he come back, when he come back, it's about the wicked is just gonna be wicked still.
That's right.
The righteous is gonna be righteous still. When he come back, that's it.
Yeah. There's no
he gonna be sitting there on CNN. You're gonna be watching it on the news. At this point, nobody watch cable no more. Somebody been done put it on YouTube, on Facebook, on one of your social medias. They'll be like, "What's that coming out of the sky?"
Mm-hmm.
And how come all of the people that a lot of these people that I know somehow ain't here no more? Because the people of the Most High watched and prayed. They stayed in connection with the Most High. They didn't have their hearts weighed down with a life that is connected to carnality, but instead they put their thoughts on the Most High and not the things of this world, right? Because the things of this world, you can't be concerned, and when I'm saying concerned, I mean over concerned with the things of the world, because it's always going to cause you to be distracted from what it is that the Most High wants to show you. Again, we think about Pharaoh. He was unable. He was not able to know what it was that the Most High was saying to him, because he wasn't connected to the Most High. He was only concerned with, his life and this, and him being this ruler of things, right? He couldn't fathom not having. He probably had everything that he probably could think about. But, at this time, it's interesting that it didn't matter how rich he was.
Nope.
When it came down to the provision that the Most High provides. Yep. It don't matter how much money you got. 7 years. 7 years is a long time. How old is Ari?
She's 7.
What do I have in this world that sustains me that I got 7 years ago? Nothing. I don't got a thing. My money gets renewed every week. My money gets renewed every week. I start off with a whole bunch on Wednesday, and then next Tuesday I'm down to zero again. And then it gets replenished again on Wednesday. So that didn't sustain me for 7 years. What do I got that's 7 years old?
We got a lot of stuff. But
I don't got nothing but love that's older than 7 years old. Oh, that's right. That's right, but Wells Fargo owns this place. This ain't even mine. then when I pay it off in a couple of years, if I don't pay the city, it still ain't gonna be mine. They gonna take it. I don't have anything that sustains me for 7 years. For 7 years, because we don't live like that. We don't live like that. Oh, wow. That's the answer right there. This thing right here is way older than 7 years old. I forgot about. How could I forget about this? This is the oldest physical thing that I have that sustains me. That's definitely older than 7 years. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I forgot about that. I don't know how, but that's just one thing. It's a very important thing. Right, because I'm saying that because we don't live our lives like that. We don't think about like preserving things like that to keep us going. But the Most High, through Yosef and that wisdom, helping them to understand that for them to survive through these coming times, you're going to have to benefit from these times of plenty and hold some back. Don't live a life in excess so that you're able to make it through the times of famine that's going to come after. That's how ants live their lives like that. Like that's their everyday situation because they live in a cycle where, they have a whole bunch, but they also within their whole life season cycle, there's a time when there's cold out. They can't. What do? Do they all just die in the winter? They go somewhere, and they live off of whatever it is that they gathered whenever it was nice out. And so think about that from a larger perspective. The scripture talks about these times when we're not going to have the ability to just go and, they're going to come around and try to take these things from us. They're going to turn your internet off. You know what I'm saying? You ain't going to be able to sit up here and just look up, that scripture that you was thinking about. You got to get that word in you while you able to get it in you. Because when you don't have that physical access to the things, then what will you do? You got to be connected to the source while he makes himself available to you. Because soon there's going to be a time where he's not so available. And if you didn't never connect yourself to the source in that time of plenty, you going hungry.
People get comfortable in a time of plenty.
We do.
It's like the virgins who didn't
That's
store
why
up
people
oil.
spend their whole income tax.
It's exactly like that. Right? So Messiah tells us to watch and pray. Watch ain't just about looking. It ain't just about looking out. It's about making preparations for a time when you're not going to have all of the things that are so readily and easily available. The most important thing is a connection to the Almighty. If you never accepted the fact that Yeshua HaMashiach came, lived, and died, and went back to the Father and sent back his Spirit so that you could walk according to the Most High's law, statutes, and commands, so that you could receive that spiritual heart transplant, if you've never accepted this truth, then you're not preparing for the future. If you never did that, you're only just thinking about what's going on in this physical realm, which is only dealing with at the end of the day having your heart be weighed down by gluttony and drunkenness and the worries of this life. All right, so let's go back over to. Hold on, let me see what this comment is over here. Dreams come through a multitude of business, and a fool's voice is known by a multitude of words. Pharaoh talked a good game, but gets stumped at business matters spiritually. Yes. Yes, because when you think about these people, they are kind of, from a certain perspective, so-called spiritual people, because they have all of these gods. They have all of these gods, quote unquote, that they follow and they worship. But when the rubber meets the road, right, we are able to see and understand that, these things at the end of the day are things that they created in their own minds, and they're not really spiritual, right? Okay, so let's go back over to Genesis and look some more at this here. Let's go down to, let's see here, 39. Read for us again, just read 38 and 39 here.
It says, and Pharaoh said to his servants, could we find another like him, a man in whom is the spirit of Elohim? Then Pharaoh said to Yosef, since Elohim has shown you all this, there was no one as discerning and wise as you.
Okay, very good. So it's interesting that, again, I said this already, when we think about the response to Joseph over here, and Joseph having the answer to the problem over here. The proper response really would have been for Pharaoh to be able to look at this and, get a better understanding to the true and living Elohim. But instead, he really just looks at Joseph and then elevates then Joseph to, the Pharaohs to the people really were gods. And so when you think about it, Pharaoh's really elevates Joseph to God status over here. Right? And so it's like he kind of gets it, but he doesn't. Right? Because he's not giving the proper credit where is due. But I want to look at, just for a moment here, when we think about his words here in verse 39. Since Elohim has shown you all this, there is no one as discerning and wise as you. Let's look at this. Let's look at these words here. Because, we want to be able to understand what, the wisdom of Elohim really is. Okay, so if we, hold on, let me see. I shouldn't have taken that away. Let's leave that up there. And let's put this back here. And let's look at verse 20. 39. King James says there is not so discreet. Right, Bane. To separate mentally or distinguish. That is to understand, attend, consider, cunning, diligently, direct, discern, eloquent, feel. It's interesting when you think about the idea of these Hebrew words, and basically this word, which is translated as discreet, means to separate mentally, which I think is an interesting idea when we think about what that can mean. If you're able to separate things mentally, it's given this to you in the English. Again, King James, it says discreet. Scripture's version, discerning. Right, when you're able to discern, right? It's an aspect of wisdom, discerning. Right, you being able to discern things and be discreet. I can have an answer to a question. But the way in which I answer the question could potentially cause someone to not want to accept my answer, even if it's the right answer.
Right.
Because there's a thing called discretion. Right? There's a thing, this idea of being able to discern a thing. Right? The idea of separating something mentally. Right? You have to be able to kind of at times compartmentalize things. It's funny that I can't remember where we were. It might have been focused. It might have been what's that marriage thing that we went to?
Weekend to Remember.
Marriage Matters. Marriage Matters. Weekend to Remember. This guy was talking about the differences between men and women, the way that they think about things. And women is like spaghetti, he said.
You remember this thing?
The women's, the way they think about you know why I remember? Because I'm reminded every day of my life. That's why I remember. Because the women, the way they think about things is like spaghetti, where things are just everything touches. Everything touches. Right? It don't have to even be connected, but they connect it. Right? But that's the idea of being able to mentally separate things. Sometimes you have to disconnect. Like, I can be right. I can be right. Because you're already mad about what I did earlier. It don't matter that I'm right now. I'm wrong to you because of this other thing. Because the way you think about things is spaghetti. But the way we think about things is like a drawer. Like it's like you have drawers. Like you got this thing and one thing.
Here.
Yeah. You have
a
an underwear drawer and you have undershirts down here and socks. Everything is separated. It's compartmentalized. It's like a TV dinner. It might be all on the same plate, but there's little sections for each part. Right? And I'm able to get this thing in the dessert. I'm not eating that dessert, but this other stuff that's here, I'll eat it. And I don't got to throw the whole thing away because it came in one package. Right. Because the things are separated from this. The things are separated. And so we have to be able to use discretion with things. And he's saying about Joseph, there's no one that is as discerning. There's no one who's able to separate things mentally like you. But we know that the reason why he's able to do this is because of the Most High. Is the sole purpose. The Most High is the sole purpose. The Most High is the one that told him what the dream meant. All he did was say what the Most High said.
He's a mouthpiece.
He just was the mouthpiece. But he says discerning and wise. These are two different words, but the discernment is kind of an aspect of wisdom. This word over here, wise, here, let's see what this is. In the Hebrew is hakam, which is wise. Chukmah would be wisdom, but this is wise. It's just kind of the singular idea of it. Wise, intelligent, skillful, artful, cunning, subtle, wise-hearted man. Right? But wise, even when you think about how can you describe this word and it's translated as wise, and the answer is, I mean, the definition of it is wise. But I think the word that we need to pay attention to, I would say, is this here skillful. Right? Because wisdom really, to be wise really is the right application, the right use of knowledge is wisdom. Right? I can have a bunch of knowledge about this or that, but not know how to execute things properly. Still, even though I have the knowledge, but wisdom is having that knowledge and being able to use the knowledge skillfully. That's wisdom. That's being wise. And again, we're looking at Joseph. He's just saying what the Most High told him. Right? And so this wisdom, this discretion is coming from the Most High. What's this say? I bet the guy that taught that marriage seminar. No, he wasn't a Hebrew. No, he wasn't. And there was many things that I forgot on purpose that came from that seminar. But that just happened to be one of the things that stuck with me. Yes. Okay, so let's go.
I can't
go
believe
ahead.
you even remember that.
Yeah,
And we've been to like 3 of those.
There was some gems, but wisdom helps me to be able to separate things mentally. I'm able to chew on the meat and spit out the bones.
Yeah. If you shoot 100 shots, you're going to hit 1 or 2.
Exactly. Then you go to these things, it's just like a Uzi out here. Something is going to hit. A lot of things are going to miss. Let's go over to the book of Isaiah, because we're talking about wisdom here. Let's go to Isaiah. Isaiah 11, 1. Read the first 5 verses here.
It says, "And a rod shall come forth from the stump of Yeshai, and the sprout from his roots shall be fruitful. The Spirit of Yahweh shall rest upon him, the Spirit of wisdom and understanding, the Spirit of counsel and might, the Spirit of knowledge and of the fear of Yahweh. And shall make him breathe in the fear of Yahweh, and he shall not judge by the sight of his eyes, nor decide by the hearing of his ears. But with righteousness he shall judge the poor, and shall decide with straightness for the meek ones of the earth, and shall strike the earth with the rod of his mouth, and slay the wrong with the breath of his lips. And righteousness shall be the girdle of his loins, and trustworthiness the girdle of his waist."
Okay, very good. So we see being described what we know of now as the coming Messiah, who in fact is Yeshua. But when we look and see the things that he has, it's funny, people are talking about this whole spaghetti thing. Yes, we see that struck a chord. It only struck a chord because it's true, right? We see when we look at the coming Messiah that he has these particular attributes. And one of the things that it says is the fact that the spirit of Yahweh will dwell upon him. Then it goes on to then describe what the spirit of Yahweh is. This is the spirit. It's given to you as these various things. But these things all are things that are encompassed in the Ruach HaKodesh, the spirit of holiness, which includes over here wisdom, understanding, counsel and might, knowledge, and the fear of Yahweh. And so when we think about the idea of the spirit and what it brings about wisdom. Because it is wisdom. When we think about the spirit that comes and lives and dwells on the inside of us, we think about what it says in Ezekiel chapter 36. It says that the spirit will cause you to do the commandments. The spiritual transplant that you receive from your faith in Messiah causes you to walk in a way that is congruent with the character of the Most High.
Oh, yeah.
It causes you to walk in wisdom. It causes you to walk in understanding, in counsel and might, in the knowledge of the Most High and the fear of Him. And so when we think about wisdom, it is synonymous. It's synonymous with the spirit of the Most High. Let's look at, and again, Joseph affirms this with the simple fact that he never claims to be the originator of these interpretations. The Most High is. All he is speaking these things, right? And so the accolades that Pharaoh gives to Joseph, the fact that there's no one discerning and wise as you, is really at the end of the day pointing back to the Most High, who's given him the wisdom and the discernment. But I want to continue to think about this idea of wisdom and its connection to the spirit. If we look over at Proverbs, let's go to Proverbs 8. Let's start reading at verse 1 here.
Verse 1 says, Does not wisdom call, and understanding lift up her voice? On the top of the heights along the way, between the paths she has taken her stand. Beside the gates leading to the city, at the entrances she shouts. O men, I call to you, and my voice is to the sons of men. You simple ones, understand insight, and you fools be of an understanding heart.
Hold on, drop down to, this goes on and on. Drop down to verse 12.
12 says, I, wisdom, have dwelt with insight and I find knowledge, foresight. The fear of Yahweh is to hate evil. I hated pride and arrogance and the evil way and the perverse mouth.
It's interesting when we think about, again, the idea of wisdom, right? I, wisdom, have dwelt with insight. These things that are connected with wisdom, insight, right? And I find knowledge. Wisdom finds knowledge. Wisdom finds foresight. Wisdom has this foresight, seeing things before, right? The fear of Yahweh. These things were mentioned in Isaiah chapter 1, starting with verse 11. Fear of Yahweh, knowledge, counsel. All of these things are, in verse 14, all of these things are connected with what wisdom is. All right, keep on going. Verse 14.
14, counsel is mine and sound wisdom. I am understanding. Mightiness is mine. By me sovereigns reign, and rulers make righteous inscriptions. By me princes rules and nobles, and all the judges of the earth. I love those who love me, and those who earnestly seek me do find me.
Okay, very good. I, wisdom, love those who love me. And those who earnestly seek me do find me. Yeshua talks about the kingdom of heaven. He talks about himself. He said, if you knock, the door will be open to you. Right? He said, seek and you will find. But this is what is being described about in regards to wisdom. But what we're talking about here is the fact that when we think about wisdom in its purest sense, we're dealing with, in fact, the character of the Most High, which is the Ruach HaKodesh, the spirit of holiness. But let's go down to drop down to verse 20. Look, start reading at verse 23 here.
23, I was set up ages ago, at the first, before the earth ever was, when there were no depths. I was brought forth.
Wisdom is what it's talking about. Keep on going.
When there were no springs heavy with water, before mountains were sunk, before the hills I was brought forth. Before he had made the earth and the fields, or the first dust of the world, when he prepared the heavens, I was there.
He's still talking about wisdom, right? Keep on going.
When he inscribed a circle on the face of the deep, when he set the clouds above, when he made the fountains of the deep strong, when he gave the sea its law, so that the waters would not transgress his mouth, when he inscribed the foundations of the earth. Then I was beside him, a master workman, and I was his delight, day by day rejoicing before him all the time, rejoicing in the world, his earth, and my delights were with the sons of men. And now listen to me, you children, for blessed are they who guard my ways.
Okay, very good. So it goes on to deal with wisdom and thinking about the idea of wisdom really being the mind of the Most High. Wisdom was there with the Most High before the commands for creation was spoken. You know, when you think about things in your, the way that we're created in the image of Elohim. And so although we don't always think about what we say, in an instant, that thing forms in your mind and then it comes out of your mouth. Sometimes it happens so fast that you don't even think about the words before you say them. But in your mind, that's what happens. Words come together in your mind and then they come out. And so when we think about wisdom, speaking about herself over here, wisdom was there when things was set up before, in fact, the waters and things were given a law. Before the Most High said, water, you go over there and then stop right there. Before he said that, wisdom was there. And so it's kind of showing us that wisdom, that the spirit of the Most High, is that mind of the Most High. And so when we think about when we receive the spirit of holiness inside of us, then we receive the mind of the Most High. In Romans, it talks about being spiritually minded and carnally minded. If we live a life that's spiritually minded, we'll have life and peace. Right? But if we live a life that is carnally minded, then we'll have death. And so it helps us to see this idea of the spirit being really the mind of the Most High, or the mind of Messiah, that needs to be manifest, right? So that we can see the wisdom, right? It's a thing that's non-corporal until it's manifest, right? Because again, we talk about the idea of being skillful. I can know what it is that I have to do, but then I got to put the thing in application. I got to actually do the thing. That's how when we think about faith, how we know that faith is not this thing that's just, just this thing that's going on in your mind. But faith is, true faith is a verb, it's an action. Right? If I say that I love you, then I'm going to do things that's loving towards you as proof. Right? There has to be some type of manifestation of this internal thing. And so when we think about the manifestation of this internal thing, wisdom, that is righteousness. That is the character of the Most High being manifest. Let's go over to let's see, I gotta switch this. Go over here to Wisdom 7. Let's start reading at verse 22 right there.
For wisdom, which is the worker of all things, taught me. For in her is an understanding spirit, holy, one only, manifold, subtle, lively, clear, undefiled, plain, not subject to hurt, loving the thing that is good, quick, which cannot be letted, ready to do good.
All of these things are the manifestation of wisdom now, right? Keep on going. 23.
Kind to man, steadfast, sure, free from care, having all power, overseeing all things and going through all understanding, pure and most subtle spirits. For wisdom is more moving than any motion. She passeth and goeth through all things by reason of her pureness.
This is interesting right here when we think about the idea of wisdom. More moving than any motion. I wonder when we think about what's that thing? What's your man? Einstein. What's that thing that he had? E equals MC squared. All right, the things about movements and things pushing and all of these things. He said over here, wisdom is more moving than any motion. She passes and goes through all things by reason of her pureness. When we think about the idea of discretion, of discernment, right? Your ability to be able to understand things that are going on around you and act and react in a way that is proper in a particular situation. When you think about wisdom is if you're operating in wisdom, if you're operating through the spirit of wisdom, the spirit of the Most High, things are going on when they're not seemingly going on, right? Because when you think about the idea of walking in the spirit, you're constantly making choices and decisions about what you're going to do next, right? What your next move is going to be. How you're going to respond to this. How you're going to respond to that. People, it's interesting when you spend so much time with people that are kind of on the outside. People who are not connected to the Most High. Every thing that you do is calculated. Because they know, these people out here watching you, waiting for you to slip up. Mm-hmm. Waiting for you to laugh at that thing, that crude and nasty thing that they're talking about. Waiting for you to join in to their debauchery. Waiting for you to laugh along with their foolishness. Right? But it says over here, for wisdom is more moving than any motion. Wisdom is always going on when we walk in the spirit, because we have to be able to say what needs to be said or not say at every moment. It's always going on. She passes through and goes through all things by reason of her pureness. Keep on going.
25. For she is the breath of power of Elohim and a pure influence flowing from the glory of the Almighty. Therefore can no defiled thing fall into her.
Okay, so again, we're talking about wisdom, right? And wisdom being manifest through you. It said that she is the breath of the power of Elohim. Wisdom comes from Elohim. He breathes that breath into you, and you manifest the breath that he breathed into you. And it's a pure influence flowing from the Most High. When we think about Pharaoh and this dream and the interpretation of the dream from Joseph, the interpretation was a pure influence flowing from the glory of the Almighty. This wasn't Joseph's thoughts. It wasn't his wisdom to say, let's take the things that we gain in these 7 years and hold some of it back and use some of it for the next. This is the wisdom that's coming from. This is the influence that's flowing from the glory of the Almighty.
Them elevating Joseph really was them really seeking to elevate the Most High. But
In their way, it was, yes.
Mm-hmm.
But that's because that's as far as their minds can go.
Mm-hmm.
Just dealing with what they was able to see.
Yeah.
They can't see the unseen, invisible Elohim. They're only able to see Joseph.
Mm-hmm.
And so they lifted him up. It's interesting when you look at verse 40 and back in Genesis, I was referred to it because I want to finish up with this wisdom over here. Where in verse 40 he said, "But over my house you yourself, and at your mouth all my people shall kiss. Only in the throne am I greater than you." He really said, I'm not greater than you in my own self. In the throne I'm greater than you because of the stuff that comes with the throne. But in myself, I'm not even greater than you, he's saying. They looking again, he's a God because of the fact that he sits on the throne. But that's a power kind of that was given to him. But he gives that to Joseph and say, only because of this throne am I greater than you.
If you think about that, this speaks to man's inability to want to submit totally to the Most High. Like Joseph should be the one greater than him, even on the throne, right?
Yeah.
But
It's
he's
that
like,
little bit he can't give
I
up.
can't give you that.
He wasn't giving up on that.
But that's man's,
Yeah.
rebellion against.
He's not going to give you everything.
Right.
He don't give you most.
I'll follow after you, but there's this one thing I got to keep.
Right.
That's the epitome of man right there. Pharaoh's, he's giving it to you. I got to give it to you. You better than me in all places. And I'm going to give you that. But I'm going to keep this part right here. But everything else, though, is all you. That's what we do. I'm going to give you my whole life. But there's this thing that I love. I can't get that up. But everything else, though, is all you. Okay, let's keep on going. We'll read verse 26 over here.
For she is the brightness of the everlasting light, the unspotted mirror of the power of Elohim, and the image of his goodness.
This is talking about, again, wisdom. Now, when we walk in the spirit, because wisdom is the spirit, when we walk in the spirit of the Most High, it says that she is the brightness of the everlasting light. We're manifesting the character of the Most High. It's the unspotted mirror. It's an unspotted reflection of the power of Elohim and the image of his goodness. Again, when we walk in the spirit. Okay, 27. Read 27 and 28.
And being but one, she can do all things, and remaining in herself, she maketh all things new. And in all ages, entering into holy souls, she maketh them friends of Elohim and prophets. For Elohim loveth none but him that dwelleth with wisdom.
Okay, very good. So, again, when we think about wisdom, and again, we're only talking about wisdom because Pharaoh says that there's none that is discerning and wise as you. But we know that the wisdom and discernment that he manifested, that he exemplified, only came from the Most High. And so these same things that have been made available to Joseph is also made available to us through Yeshua HaMashiach. Okay, so let's drop down here. Let's go back to Genesis. Real sheet. Looking at verse 41 here. And so it's interesting when we look down and see, again, like we just looked at verse 40 here, where he is given all power. Basically, he's given all power.
You said basically.
Yes.
For all intents and purposes.
Just you over everybody else, not me, but everybody else. Pharaoh says, right? So he essentially has all power. At your mouth, all people shall kiss. Except not me, but everybody else. All the other people, right? That's what he says over here. And so it's interesting when you think about the connection between Joseph and Messiah. Right? Because he is a picture of Messiah. Joseph is. And so when we think about Messiah, he, in fact, is the Most High has given all power to Messiah. Right? All power is given to Messiah. Here, let's look at this. Let's go over the Revelation here. Revelation. First of all, let's go back to Scriptures version here. Revelation 19. Read, let's see, 11. Start reading at verse 11 down to 19.
And I saw the heaven opened, and there was a white horse, and he who sat on him was called trustworthy and true, and in righteousness he judges and fights. And his eyes were as a flame of fire, and on his head were many crowns, having name that had been written, which no one had perceived except himself. And having been dressed in a robe dipped in blood, and his name is called the Word of Yahweh. And the armies in the heavens, dressed in fine linen, white and clean, followed him on white horses. And out of his mouth goes a sharp sword, that with it he should smite the nations, and he shall shepherd them with a rod of iron. And he treads the winepress of the fierceness and wrath of El Shaddai. And on his robe and on his thigh he has a name written, Sovereign of Sovereigns and Master of Masters. And I saw one messenger standing in the sun, and he cried with a loud voice, saying to all the birds that fly in mid-heaven, Come and gather together for the supper of the great Elohim.
Okay, so when we think about, again, we looked at earlier where Messiah talks about watching and praying so that you're ready for the coming. We think about over here dealing with the coming of Messiah, where he says that he is the Lord of Lords. He's the King of Kings. He's the Master of Masters. All power is given to him. So it's interesting when we think about Joseph, when we look at the life of Joseph over here and where he is, whatever he says, that's what they did. And it was necessary for the people to follow the commands, the words of Joseph if they wanted to live. I mean, they didn't have to do what he said, but they would have died.
It wasn't go very well.
Yeah. Yeah, there's some consequences if they didn't follow. You could do what you want to do, but it would be behoove it of you to follow after the words of what he's saying. And so, again, when we think about the idea of wisdom and the mind of Yahweh and the manifestation of that wisdom being the words of Yahweh, and when we think about the word of Yahweh is in fact Yeshua. And so it's interesting when we look at Joseph over here, literally his word saves the people. His word saves the people. And so it's interesting when you think about, well, let's look at a few things. Because we know that Messiah is in fact going to rule. He's our king right now. He's our king, but he gonna be everybody's king, right? Look at Philippians 2:9. We could sit up here and say that Pharaoh was the king, but at the end of the day, really, Pharaoh he did what Joseph said too.
He said to put that store, that stuff up for 7 years, and he did it.
He doing what Joseph said. He doing what Joseph say do. Look at Philippians 2.
You know, that reminds me like people say, you ask them why they do what they do, then they don't really have a real reason, you know?
Mm-hmm.
He's like, they be like, why are you storing up all this grain? Well, Joseph had this
says
dream, and that's what Joseph said it meant.
That's the only answer he got. Look at Philippians 2. Start reading at verse 9.
Elohim therefore has highly exalted him and given
him being Yeshua, actually. Keep on going.
And given him the name which is above every name.
We just looked in Revelations where it talked about this new name that he got that nobody knew except for himself was the only one who even knew it. Go ahead.
That at the name of Yeshua every knee should bow, of those in heaven and of those on earth and of those under the earth. And every tongue should confess that Yeshua Messiah is master to the esteem of Elohim the Father.
Okay, very good. So it's interesting when we think about the idea of Messiah ruling and every knee bowing and every tongue confessing. And the connection between that and Joseph. Now they could say that they don't follow Joseph, but I bet they're gonna come up and get some of that, some of his things that he stored, right? And so you could say what you want to say until it come down to it, and then you're gonna find out who's really in control. And so when we think about this over here in terms of Philippians 2:10, where it says every knee will bow, every tongue will confess. This don't mean that everybody is going to believe and be a follower of or a child of the king. When you receive your judgment, whether it be unto life or unto death, you're going to be on your knees. It's only going to be one king. And unfortunately, it's going to be people out here who's living out Philippians 2:10, but on the wrong side of things. Because they never intentionally or, purposefully of their own volition chose to make Messiah their king. Like when he come and is king over you, and there's nothing that you could do about it. At that point, it's too late for you then. You should have been watching and praying before he came, because by the time he get here for judgment, it's gonna be too late. So it's people who, same when we look at Joseph, it's people who thought that they was gonna be, I don't need these things that they doing out over there, following after this strange person. I'm just gonna live out my life the way I want to. And they probably just died because they didn't
They were selling themselves.
huh?
They were selling themselves as slaves.
Yeah. At the end of the day, the truth of what it was that Joseph put in place came to pass, and you could have benefited from it, or suffered from it. But at the end of the day, he was that ruler. But again, he's a picture for us of Messiah's rule. Let's look at another verse. Let's look over at Isaiah 45. That's my cursor. Here we go. Isaiah 45 and 21. Read 21 down to the end.
It says, "Declare and bring near. Let them even take counsel together who has announced this from of old. Who has declared it from that time? Is it not I, Yahweh? Then there is no one besides me, a righteous El and a Savior. There is none besides me. Turn to me and be saved, all you ends of the earth, for I am El and there is no one else."
He said, turn to me and be saved, all you ends of the earth. When we think about Joseph as this picture of Messiah, and thinking about Egypt at this time, from a Egypt perspective, the whole earth is Egypt. And so these people, specifically when we're thinking about Jacob and his sons, they're coming up to Egypt. The world is revolving around Egypt. And so when we think about this verse in particular, turn to me and be saved, all you ends of the earth, as true as it was for Joseph over there, is the same thing we think about in terms of Messiah, where his the thing that he's providing, you got to come to him in order to be able to benefit from the thing that he's providing. 23.
"I have sworn by myself, a word has gone out of my mouth, and righteousness, and shall not return, so that to me every knee shall bow, every tongue swear. One shall say only, in Yahweh do I have righteousness and strength. He comes to him, and all those displeased with him shall be put to shame. In Yahweh all the seed of Israel shall be declared right and boast."
Okay, very good. So again, we see this scripture over here dealing with this messianic verse that's being put forth, right? But again, when we think about what we see with Joseph as being this picture of Messiah, where all of salvation came through him. I want to go down to, where was it here where he says, 44. Let's go back to Genesis and look at his name before we go ahead and be done here. Let's look at his name. Before this 41. 44. Oh, 45. Here, read 45 right there.
45. And Pharaoh called Joseph's name Zophnath Paneah, and he gave him as a wife Asenath, the daughter of Potipharah, priest of On. And Yosef went out over all the land of Mitzrayim.
Okay, very good. So this, of course, is a Egyptian name, right? But it still has a meaning. What did it mean to them? Let's see here.
You know, I was laughing because all the kids know that name from Joseph. What is the cartoon Joseph?
Oh, yeah.
What is it? The King of Egypt or something like that.
What's the name of that
Is
movie?
that the King
Prince of
Joseph?
Dreams or something.
Is that Joseph?
Yeah.
Whatever it is,
Yeah.
the little kids can say that long name.
Yeah.
And I'm like, how do they know? Like I was like, oh my goodness, they're so smart. Oh my goodness. And then it was like, oh, that's what they called them in that cartoon. I was like, oh.
That's how they remember.
They remembered it. Show us that like Zephaniah.
Yeah. Yeah, so when we look at this word, which of course is Egyptian, it says here, treasury of the glorious rest. Right? Treasury of the glorious rest. Here, let's look at hold on one second here. This is, let's see, Jameson, Fawcett, and Brown. Also, another way to think about this name is revealer of secrets, or savior of the land. And so when we think about this, the significance of this, of course, this is, Coptic, it's Egyptian, but being who Joseph is and understanding what he's representing, for us, a picture of Messiah. Messiah is, in fact, a revealer of secrets, right? He is looking at, when we think about Joseph, what he's doing over here, he's making it possible for those that are, coming to him to see the unseen, to have an understanding of things that are beyond this physical realm, right? So he really is, for them, a revealer of secrets. And then when he does this for them, he becomes a savior of the land. And we think about Yeshua, who is in fact the salvation of Yahweh. He too is a savior of the land. So when we think about the significance that Joseph has with who he is in the flesh, and the picture that he creates for us in regards to pointing us towards Messiah, it's interesting that there are so many, almost everything that we see as it relates to Joseph points us to Messiah. And so lastly, I just want to just go over to the next chapter and the cliffhanger that it gives us over here when we think about this whole thing with in 42. in the first 15 or 17 or so verses, that we see that his brothers who come up, who to receive food from Egypt, they come up and see Joseph, and they don't know who he is, right? They don't recognize him. They look him right in his face, and they don't recognize him. They don't know him, but Joseph knows them, right? And again, it's interesting when you think about Messiah when he came to this earth and he talked to the biblical lawyers, the people who did nothing but study Torah all day. He said, you read Moses, you read of me. These people who didn't do nothing but study the Torah and read about Moses. He said to them, you read of Moses, and while you was doing that, you was reading about me. And so to his brothers, he was unrecognizable, even though they should have been able to look at him and know that it was them, that it was him.
They should have seen a resemblance.
Or something.
That makeup must have been real thick.
I know. When I see people, I'll be like, wait a second. I may not remember where I seen you from, but come on, man. Where'd I see you from again? I don't gotta even know where from. But hold on. You look so... I be doing that all the time with the way that it is with the job. And it's like... If I spent any amount of time with... I seen somebody just a few weeks ago that we used to do all kinds of things together when I was young. And I seen him at this job. I looked in his face. I mean, I know I look different from when I was younger because I'm a little hairier than I was back then. But he looked basically the same, just kind of bigger, a little bit gray on his face. Wait a second, ain't you from Knoxville? Didn't I used to hang out with you in the back of the Knoxville schoolyard back in the days? Oh yeah, that is right. I couldn't remember what his name was, but we spent time together.
Right.
And I looked at him in his face. Oh yeah, I know you from somewhere. They looked at somebody who was actually their brother.
Right.
They spent time with him. They should have known who he was, but they didn't know who he was. And so...
I think about just the makeup nowadays that people transform their whole face around.
I know that is right.
So,
but did they wear
he
that
had
much
he
makeup
must have
though?
all that makeup, that thick makeup on himself with
Is
the
that
little
what they
eye
did?
things. I don't know. That's what they
Did they make
us-
themselves look like the
They make
pictures on the
us-
walls?
They make
I
us
thought
think
the
about they look like
Egyptians-
that.
Yeah.
With the little,
He
you
was-
couldn't see his hair. He had the little,
I know, but if he was younger, he would have been less hairy though,
But he
right?
was also in a way royalty, right?
Yeah.
So he was probably
They was-
dressed in different garment, probably different makeup.
that makeup had to
I
been
mean,
thick.
I'm saying that it that's what it was. They definitely didn't recognize him. But
can't
all I'm
imagine.
saying is that the connection is that he's someone who they should have been able to recognize.
Yeah.
And when you think about Yeshua making the connection, there was those that did recognize him.
There
The
was-
majority of people didn't recognize him. The majority of people didn't understand him to be Messiah.
They said, "How could he be Messiah?"
I know your daddy.
Yeah.
Your daddy making tables over there in chairs. He's a carpenter. Right? But those that had an eye to see and an ear to hear, they did recognize him. And so the connection is that when we look at Yosef, at Joseph, when his brothers were presented to him, he knew who they were. They didn't know who he was. And the same thing is true for Messiah. When he walked the earth, he knew who he came to deal with. But everybody didn't know who he was. And so when we think about, again, this connection that we see between the two of them, it's interesting when we think about the fact that Messiah really, the way that we come to that knowledge is through revelation. Something has to be revealed to us from a spiritual perspective for us to be able to accept who Messiah is. They had many interactions with Joseph before the revelation came, and then they knew. And then it was like as if nothing really happened. But it took that revelation to come for them to be able to know who he was. When they was really able to look and see through whatever that stuff was that they was looking at to know who he was. And so the same thing is true for you and I. Somebody could sit up here and talk to you about Messiah and the truth of who he is until they are blue in the face. But until you have that revelation, before the Most High takes the scales off of your eyes and causes you to be able to see, and before he unstops your ears and causes you to be able to hear his words, before that spirit comes and actually penetrates that stony heart, all of these things, the gospel is will continue to be foolishness to you until your spiritual eyes are open. And so when we look at the story of Joseph, it's interesting when we look at how this ends, in the story where Messiah, I'm saying Joseph, not Messiah. Joseph is going to begin to put his brothers through a series of tests to see if they are truly repentant. Which again is another kind of parallel connection between Messiah and Joseph, because he causes for his people to go through the wilderness to test and prove our faith, to see if we're actually worthy to make it over. So it's interesting as we go ahead and close down, thinking about what is to come in terms of looking at Joseph's interaction with his brothers, where it's not just over as soon as he sees them. It's interesting that this is not the end of the story. As soon as he sees his brothers, it's just like, oh, it's you guys back again. Mm-hmm. He is going to put them through a series of tests to prove their hearts. Mm-hmm. And so it's something for us to think about in terms of the way that Messiah moves. It's not just the thing where, Messiah just comes and turns something on inside of you, and then that's it.
Yeah, because, we killed him. You know what I mean? Just like in their minds, they killed Joseph.
Yeah. It's so there is a path. There's a path that we all must go down. And he'll come and he'll call you to come down the path. But you got to walk down the path in order to get to the destination, right? Yes, discretion, right? That's what Joseph is actually doing. Mm-hmm. He sees his brothers, but these are the same people that threw him in the pit. Mm-hmm. Are they sorry that they did that? Do they have repentant hearts, or are they still wicked? The only reason why they came is to get some food. But what is their heart condition like? And so Joseph has to really deal with that first, and we'll see that as the story goes on, which we'll continue with, y'all willing, on next Shabbat. So go ahead.
where can you go to the verse where he sees them? Where does it say where he sees them? I'm just wondering if he was obviously a prophet, so I wonder if he kind of has some kind of knowledge that it was. I mean, I guess if the whole land was barren, eventually they was going to come up. But,
Well, you think about the fact that he's the little brother, right? Like, say for instance, I'm little, I'm young, and my grandfather, for instance, always looked the same. 'Cause he's older. Older people that's older than you, that's already grown already, and you're young. You could grow up. Now you're grown, but they've been grown.
Right.
So they might look a little bit different, but they basically look the same.
Right.
And so he sees them he was a little kid, and they was grown out handling their business out there in the
doing all
streets.
kinds of stuff.
I know. And so he could change because he went from a boy to a man, but for them, they look the same. But the verse is verse 7. Read verse 7 right there.
And Yosef saw his brothers and recognized them, but he acted as a stranger to them and spoke to them harshly and said to them, "Where do you come from?" And they said, "From the land of Canaan to buy food."
He said he spoke to them harshly. Like, where you from? Where y'all from? What you up here for?
What's
you
the
need?
stranger? Is that like a boy or?
Let's see. He acted as a stranger. He made himself strange. Nakar, scrutinize, to look intently, with recognition, care, respect, suspicion.
Oh,
So
he was like, he kind of was like, I'm about to interrogate y'all.
Yeah, so let me look into this a little further. You guys look like my brothers. You are my brothers, but I'm trying to figure out where your hearts is at. I'm going to go ahead and scrutinize your situation. And again, when you think about Messiah, that's what he does. If you want to follow me, he said, pick up your torture stake. Deny yourself, pick up your torture stake, follow me. He could have just said, all right, everything good. We're together now.
Yay,
But there's
I
things.
finally came. I've been waiting here for y'all this whole time.
Right, but there's things that you need to be doing. And we're going to prove if you true to your words.
Well, I guess in a way he had to. His last time he saw them, they was left in the. He was pretty much left for dead, right?
Yeah.
So
And
I guess
they
he
left
had
him
to
in the
figure
pit.
out, like, are they still on that same level, or
Yes.
I guess checking their temperature.
Exactly. Which, in fact, that's wisdom.
Yeah,
That's discretion.
right.
But all I'm saying is that the same thing is true with Messiah. When you say that you're going to change your life and follow after him, Messiah say, let's see if you really are going to change your
Let's
life.
check your
Right.
temperature.
Check
Yeah.
your temperature.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Okay. All right, very good. Okay,
Shula said Messiah also said, who is my brother?
yeah, who is my mother and who is my brother? But he's talking about somebody who literally is his mother and literally is his brother. But based on your actions, based on the way in which you live your life,
Right.
he's saying, like, who really is my brother? Who really is my mother? Who really is connected to me like that? You know, Messiah, this is what our life in Messiah is we have to walk the walk and talk the talk. Right? Everything has to be the same. Right? We can't be out here saying one thing and living a life that's different. Okay, so that being said, I guess for now we'll go ahead and be done for right now. We'll come back, y'all willing, next week and continue with the cliffhanger over here and see what's going on with Joseph and the way he's dealing with his brothers. hope everyone has a rest of Shabbat day. Thank everybody for their questions and comments over here in the comment section. And we'll say for now, Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat shalom.